Hello everyone, I'm Alicia Jackson, licensed professional counselor, and we are reviewing the final chapter or episode of The Best Shape of My Life, Will Smith's docuseries on YouTube Originals. My goodness. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I had so many moments, even moments where I teared up myself, that were really beautiful in this episode. I can't wait to dig into it, but first, subscribe to my channel. Next, so let's dig in. He is preparing himself to read his chapter about his children, Mutiny. I think it's chapter 16, if I remember correctly. I believe so. If it's not, charge it to my head. And he is not loving it. He ain't no having it here. He's not loving it. So he starts. He starts the book, starts the episode, with listing his priorities. And I'm guessing this is how he wants them to be. Number 1, Will. Number 2, Jada. 3, kids. 4, his career. And 5, feelings. It's interesting to me, observation, that he separates his feelings from himself. Very strange to me, but interesting that is how he's labeling it. So how then they're restructured how I guess his life has played out. That 1, his career. 2, his children. 3, Jada. 4, Will. And 5, his feelings. So and this is crazy. I didn't even know I was gonna say this as I'm talking it out. But you notice that he's right above his feelings. Like, you can't separate yourself from your feelings. That's just not how it works. Your feelings are a part of you, and they tell you if you are okay or not okay. And so you can't separate the two. And so he's seen that, and that's really what this chapter with his children is about. It's so many beautiful things that I saw, and I was just like grasping, like, ooh, light bulb moment. It's a therapist playground, really, this chapter, in this episode. So he talks about Willow, and Willow is, as far as I know, is non-binary, so I'll be referring to Willow using they, their pronouns. But he talks about how Willow wanted to quit. After Will whipped my hair, that was my jam back in the day. I used to play with my nieces, and they would go crazy. And so Willow is done. They have, performed, and they're like, Dad, I'm done. And so Willow says to him, it doesn't matter to you that I'm done, Daddy. And Will says that causes, for him, he's like, oh, it's like almost like he's like, you're a child, you don't get it. We signed contracts. You got to do this tour. You about to book another tour because your dad's about to make it happen for you, and Willow's like, but I don't want to do this. And so you notice the next thing they go to is him kind of cringing in the corner as he's preparing to read his chapters. And he talks about, like, I don't want to read my chapters about my kids in front of my kids. This is not people's business. And for me, it's like he is saying, this is like the most vulnerable space for me. People can hear about my dad and the abuse, but who I am in my children's eyes, that's all that matters to me. And he was very, very concerned about them critiquing. He felt like Willow would have critiques, Jaden would have critiques, and Willard, Trey, who they call Trey, would have critiques, but just wouldn't tell him. And so he's concerned about that, and also concerned about how the world's going to see him through his children's eyes, because he feels like that defines him as an individual. If he fails as a parent, then he fails completely. Everything doesn't matter, because in his mind, there's still a part of him that feels like, I failed my mother, I didn't protect her from my dad. And if I fail in my children's eyes, then it's a wrap for me. And so Willow shades her head to tell their dad that I'm not about this life. You didn't hear me when I said, you don't care that I'm done, Daddy? So let me tell you that I'm done by my actions, and you'll come down and see my bald head. And Willow kind of gave her father some clarity in that moment to let him know that you are doing to me what your father did to you. And I'm sure that was a lot for him to take in at that moment. He talks about that. So then they go to showing it's week 18. He is at 203, 203 pounds, 0.8. So he's really still 204. And he wants to be 202. And he's not really pleased with that, but he's trying to finish his book. So I'm sure the workouts are not the president in his life. And so he's preparing himself to go to Miami and read the chapter. So it's going back into, boom, him reading the chapters. So he's at Miami. He misses a day of working out with his trainer. And he still got four chapters to finish and 3 pounds to lose. So his therapist talks about mistakes that parents make. And I agree wholeheartedly with her. I think parents, we take, for our own pain, we try to take control over that pain and protect ourselves from it. And so we do the same thing for our children. We try to make sure that nothing that happened to us will happen to our children. And again, the lie that we're telling ourselves is that we're in control. We don't have any control of how our children respond to us, or who our children will be. We have no control over that. What we do have control over is giving them what our best. That's what we have control over. And so her therapist talks about how parents make the mistake of promising, especially parents who have conflicts with their parents, that they don't want to make any of the mistakes that our parents made. The hard part is that your parents are a part of who you are. And so it's going to show up. It's going to show up as we see it with Willow. Right? So she said that in reading the chapters that Will is really looking for understanding from his children to hopefully get some reconciliation about the mistakes that he's made in their child rearing, and get some understanding. And that's definitely what they give him. And it's so beautiful to watch and see. And so just observation, all of them looked uncomfortable. All of them looked uncomfortable as they sat there, waiting for him to read Jaden and the story of his conception. He was cringing. They were all like, oh my God. But I did notice that, Jaden and Willow were the more vocal ones, and Trey was more just like making an awkward face, like, I can't believe I'm hearing this. Trey, when he realized he was becoming a father, Will Smith, when he realized he was becoming a father for the first time, he kind of had this come to Jesus moment with himself. Like, oh my goodness, I'm becoming a dad, and I talk so much junk about what my dad did to me. Now I have to back up. I have to back up the stuff I was talking and show it for my son. And he said he felt like a little boy himself. And so I really saw like he was 9-year-old Will was coming back up saying like, I'm a coward, I'm a failure, and how can I be a father to him? And so it was really beautiful to see his children consoling them. Like they all reached to grab him as he was crying and reaching this, and talking about the turmoil he was going through with being a father for the first time. And then he said something that was just so, heavy. He said, I have to be the best father that this world has ever seen, or death. And so his mission, because we were talking, this is very similar to his dad, mission completed or death, right? And that mission that he had set, that bar he had set so high, the best father that this world has ever seen, the world, that is leading, that's so, one, how is that defined? How is that defined, and who defines that? And so if he's leaving it up to the world to define it, then oh my goodness, he's failed before he's even started. Because we see now on social media, everybody's got an opinion, and anybody can do. I don't want to use double negatives. Nothing that anyone can do is going to be without critique and offense, because we are just we are a hurt people. We are. And things we see trigger the hurt, and we respond through that hurt. And that's what that's the trap that Will was putting himself in by having this high standard of and not flushed out at all. The best father that this world has ever seen, or death. It's like, whew, my goodness. We don't have we don't even, it's too lofty. And I feel and these are my opinions and my observation, I feel like Will has definitely showed up for his children, just by giving them the space and allowing them to teach him. That's the beauty of it. So it's great to see last episode his mother have a space for him and say, hey, you're not a coward. I wasn't looking for you to protect me. I'm your mother. And your father was supposed to protect you. And I'm your mother. I'm the one who's supposed to keep you safe. And to allow Will to have that moment, and to reconcile and console 9-year-old Will. And then to see his children be able to teach him lessons because of what he gave them. You'll see what I'm saying as we keep going. So he talks about Jaden, how they had this movie. It was after the Karate Kid, the reboot, and After Earth. I'm thinking it was around like 2013 or so in my life. I'm trying to remember like what time that came about, and it flopped. So he was a teenager, and this is when social media is like in its boom, its glory, and it was trashed on social media, and he felt like his son thought that he was betrayed by his father, because he did everything that his father led him to do and taught him to do, and then he asked to be an emancipated minor. And so Will said he learned that either you worry about what people feel or you win. So again, he's realizing that what people say and what they feel about you can't dictate you. Then here's Jaden's response. Jaden's response he said to himself, like, hey, we were working on our relationship, and that's what mattered to me most. And the way people responded just shows the vitality of the world. He was able to externalize it at his young age, not at Will's 50. He was able to externalize it to say, this is just how the world is. This doesn't say anything about me. And so Will had to do something right in order for Jaden to have that knowledge, and then to be able to give that back to his father as reassurance that, hey, I didn't let what people said about me change how I feel about me, or change how I feel about you. And they hugged, and that was beautiful. Okay. Therapist dream. And then my observation is Willow is so affirming. Because Willow just says these one-liners throughout this. She's just like, oh, that was so beautiful. Or, oh, you just wrote that perfectly. And I loved how I loved how they were affirming their father through that. Beautiful. And so Then Will goes back to the whip my hair fiasco that, they woke up with no hair. And the question that Willow asked, like, do you care? He said was really, do you care how I feel? Like, you don't care that I'm done, Dad? You don't care how I feel? And that gave Willow, in asking that question, gave Will permission to check in with his feelings. Isn't it great? Okay. So that was beautiful. So he said that helped him to reassess his relationships with his children. And he saw the wounds that he placed on his children through each child. So Trey said got the most ignorant version of his parenting. Jaden received Will Dad 2.0, and then Willow had to shave their head to get Will's attention. And so the therapist talked about the core conflict with Will and his father, and recognizing that he is not his father. I think what is so poignant in us to really have peace and be centered is to know that there's going to be a part of us that is like our parents. One, DNA, okay? And two, because of one, our parents, no matter how abusive or not they may have been, because not all parents are abusive, but even the ones that are not all bad. Will shows us this person that his father was helped to build this career for himself, right? And if he did not do that, Uncle Fluffy, the one he's talking about, the people pleaser and keep everybody entertained, could not entertain the world without that work ethic that his father drilled into him. Then he wouldn't be able to do and accomplish what he has accomplished. Now, some may say, hey, he didn't deserve to do that, or to look at what cost he did that. That's up to you. Everybody's going to say something, but I feel that Will is in part proud of his accomplishments, and so is his family, and they have of course benefited from those accomplishments. And so recognizing that he is not his father, and take the parts of his father that are good, not all bad. We are not bad or good. Will's father's abuse of him does not put him in the bad category. It means he has done some things that have been harmful and abusive, and those things need to be held accountable for. Those things are were not okay. Those things put his children and their mother in harm's way, and had some severe emotional trauma and damage that they had to work out in their lives. Real. Holding him accountable, absolutely. And at the same time, there are parts of him that also fed into the love and care also that Will has for his children, and applying that to his life. And that's what the conflict is talking about. And I feel like we are all in that conflict all the time. It comes from a type of therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy. It's another therapy that I have training in, and it talks about how two opposite things can both be true. And we see that oftentimes the world is trying to make us choose one or the other. And it's like we can have both. And we can sit in the duality, in the uncomfortableness of the duality. It's uncomfortable to say that even though Will's father was abusive, that he also taught his son, and his family some valuable lessons that helped them be functional adults. And it's like you want to say, well, no, because he was abusive, right? But they both sit in this uncomfortableness of the human experience. And we have to sit in that duality and that uncomfortableness. And that's what, our brain really fights at that. It wants to be black or white. It wants Mr. Fluffy or the general. It doesn't want to say like, ooh, the Mr. Fluffy, it can be welcomed, and the general can both be welcomed, because they're a part of us, right? And so that is where we see like the core conflict that the therapist is talking about. And so we go to Will talking about his father, with his children, and reading about his father taking care of him when he was sick and dying, and Daddy-O, and the thoughts that he was having so during taking care of him. And this is the conflict, right? So he's calling him Daddy-O, and we talked about that last video, and then he's taking care of him, willing him, and having these thoughts about avenging his mother's abuse and pushing him down the stairs. And he said nobody would think that Uncle Fluffy, Will Smith, would do this to their father. I get away with it. He's old. He's dead. I killed him. That's it. His children looked at him like, oh my God, Dad, you had these thoughts? But I thought it was so human for him to say that, because I know 9-year-old little Will had these thoughts. He's like, I won't be a coward again if I do something to stop it, right? But instead, he chose love, and he chose to affirm his dad, something that maybe he learned from Willow. But he chose to affirm his dad and tell him he did a good job with his life, and that he did a great job being a father, and that he's going to take care of the people he loves, and he doesn't have to worry anymore. And then his father leaves, and it's a very, very affirming thing, and that's where I got a little tearful myself just watching it, because it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. So then we see some footage from his father, Daddy-O, and his regrets. And one of the observations as he was talking, of course, I'm seeing his aversion to his own feelings. Like, he's like, oh, I got to tear up on this one. Like, oh, I need a moment. Like, he was just not liking the sitting with his feelings. And I think, unfortunately, this is why so many conversations that need to be had don't happen until after someone dies, or because we just fight so hard to not feel these feelings, to not sit in the awkwardness. And a part of just transparency, sometimes I'll let it out, sometimes I won't, but a part of my life's journey is forcing myself to sit in those uncomfortable feelings and saying what I feel needs to be said to the people that matter to me the most. And I think one of the reasons why is just because the death of my father has kind of just shifted how I show up in my relationships. Like, I'm not going to let things that I feel be left unsaid, because I care so much about the people in my life. Like, my heart is huge, it's big, and so I have to say the things. But Daddy-O's regrets coming back. So he said, on occasion, I would fly off the handle, and I wish I had the ability to give things more thought before reacting. And I know that a lot of people have would have a hard time like accepting this as him taking accountability, because he is definitely minimizing his abuse and the effects of his abuse to the mother of his children and his children. What I will say to you, I know I don't have any control over how you respond to this, because this is all triggering information. Because we're all this is how we all have experiences from our parents that have impacted us, either positive or negative. And truly the journey in life is reconciling that. And so we're not always going to get the apology in the way that we want to receive it, especially from our parents, because the hurt is coming from the place where they're limited. And so it was beautiful that Will's mother was able to say, yes, baby, you're not a coward, and nor did I ever think that you were. Put that responsibility on you to save me. Would it have been beautiful for Willard Sr. to say, son, I am so sorry that I put you in a place to think or even feel responsible for the safety of your mother and your siblings because of my behavior. And I apologize for that, and I take full responsibility for that. That would have been wonderful, lovely, and I'm sure that 9-year-old Will would have been able to receive that and hear that. But the words he used, saying, on occasion I would fly off the handle. I'm sure that some of Will's parts said occasion, that because he said my whole childhood I was fearful. There were things that you spanked me for that I didn't deserve. Like he could have definitely gone there, but receiving what his father had to say, and I don't know if he had to work with his therapist in order to do that, to show that he was acknowledging his part in the pain and the childhood wounds that Will received as a child, and wishing that he could have done something differently to address his feelings. So that, I think that's the work that we all have to do, and that takes time. It takes time. So Will talks about ending this video. Well, actually, we got more stuff before he talks about that. But Will talks about being able to receive and give. So like Will's father gave him the lessons of fortitude and pushing through and work ethic and powering through, pushing your feelings down, getting it there, putting your head down and pushing through, which helped him to reach this pinnacle in his career, which helped him to also give his father a comfortable place to live, give his family, his children, and his father was able to receive those gifts. And then Willow says, you're such a beautiful person, such an affirming child. They are, and I really appreciate, and again, it was beautiful to hear. We're in week 20, so we're still trying to finish everything. We're in week 20. The book is finished. The pounds, ? We don't know. So he has a book signing. He's exhausted. He's getting back into the working out, and he's saying like the book was so much more exhausting than even working out. And his therapist said, and I wanted to say yes, ! That the only way to create balance is to have boundaries. That's the only way to create balance, is to have boundaries, and you need to do it. It's the only way. If you're going to take care of yourself, you have to have boundaries. And it's difficult. It's difficult. I've done a series on boundaries, and you can check that out. But I also am going to do some follow-up videos in the future too. One about just how to resolve the guilt of saying no. I think it's really important to grapple with that. And there's so many reasons why people feel guilt for saying no. But Will is teaching us. He gave us a tutorial, whether he realizes it or not, about why setting boundaries is so important. I'm hoping that he continues his journey with setting boundaries, because that journey never ends. It never ever ends, because life keeps shifting and needs need to be adjusted and priorities shift. And so we have to set boundaries with ourselves and with other people, to make sure that we are getting the needs that we need to address met, and that we're getting the most out of life that we want, that our goals are being reached, right? So Will talks about how he was not prepared for the pain, the turmoil, the drain of revisiting his trauma. And I thought that was awesome to just say out loud. Oftentimes, and he's in therapy, but people often don't realize how it can be. It can be painful. It can be so painful to revisit trauma, and it's why me as a clinician, I try to do it with much tender care, and also be responsible with my clients as we're discussing it. But he talked about human nature, and how human nature is how humans are, that we are creatures of narrative. And I definitely agree that our stories are so important, and the stories we tell ourselves sometimes kind of get in the way of us living in our truth, in our authentic truth. And it's just because reality can be painful. And so through the last episodes, the first 4, Will is trying to protect himself from discussing these 2 painful pieces of him. 9-year-old Will, who thought about ending his life, and then Will as a father who has some grapples. Like, he is unsure. He's unsure if he's done a great job with his children, and because he's made some mistakes. And some of the mistakes that his father made, and he's like, if that made me feel like this, that wanted to kill, I thought I wanted to end my life, then what are my children thinking of me? And so he was at these 2 very vulnerable spaces and trying to protect himself from feeling them. But he's like, I can't do this. I got to finish this book because people are counting on me. And so that's why sometimes deadlines are helpful, and the work ethic that his father placed in him would not allow him to miss that deadline. I'm just saying, think about it. So he talked about how authenticity is more and more powerful in his life right now than mystery. Awesome. I think the time that Will came about and where he is now, everything that's played out in our time, and social media probably played a piece in this, which is beautiful. Social media has its shadow spots and good spots. And so I think that's one of the reasons why, authenticity is so important. And then not being authentic can be so draining, like we were talking about before. Uncle Fluffy is draining, and he's tiring, and he probably also has some feelings towards Uncle Fluffy too. So I'm glad that he's learning that just being Will is great. And he said that we as humans, sometimes we have these choices to choose to be loving or unloving, choose to be wise or foolish. But he said that the best thing to choose, even though it's hard, is choosing compassion and choosing courage. And he said bravery, but I'm using courage because that's the C word from IFS. And again, I'm pumping the video. Go watch IFS. But it's so important for us to choose compassion. Have compassion towards ourselves. Have compassion towards the parts of us that remind us of our parents. Have compassion towards the part of us that have hurt others. Have compassion towards other people, towards people who have hurt us, who have caused wounds within us. Have compassion towards them, as Will did. He said he chose, like, should I push Daddy-O down the stairs? Would nobody think that I did this? But instead he chose to affirm his father and to have him die in peace. And then he also gained peace through that. Through courage, through setting boundaries, he chose to be courageous and be vulnerable with us and teach us so many valuable lessons that I don't even think he's fully aware of, that he has taught us. And also mirror to Black men, I have to say it, what vulnerability looks like. It's uncomfortable. It's not cute. It's not easy. It's exhausting, but it's so worth it, because he definitely cemented the relationship with his children by sharing how much he loves them and how much he feels, even hurt by the pain that he has caused them. And doing that at the age they're at in their 20s is going to help them be better for their children. Awesome work. Awesome work, Will Smith. Again, I know you're probably not watching this, but I'm grateful that you shared your life with us. I'm grateful that you were brave enough to be vulnerable. And this was definitely a wonderful, wonderful thing for me, myself, as a therapist. I'm grateful. And we'll see what comes up next. I'm going to also read the book as well. And thanks so much for watching. If you have not, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And I will see you next time. Take care. Peace.